When working in ConnectFX, there are many different ways of connecting your nodes and controlling those connections. I have one clip here that I want to create a stylized look and add some graphics to it. So I want to take it into ConnectFX. So with this clip selected, I go to my Effects ribbon and I choose Create ConnectFX. And we step into ConnectFX. Looking at the nodes in our schematic view, we can see here is our original media source, and then this is the result node going back to the timeline. Immediately we see that the result node has two different colored connections. It has a red input and it has a blue input. A red input is the front input of any node, and the blue input is the matte or alpha input of any node. The yellow output of any node is the result of that node. I want to create a very stylized color look for this image. Going down to our nodes below, we can scroll and try to find our color correction tools. A great tip for you to locating tools quickly inside your bin is bring your cursor over the bin and hit the starting letter for any tool you're trying to find. If I hit the C key, you'll notice that only the tools that start with the letter C are highlighted. I can now drag the color correction tool into my schematic. If you want to connect a node onto your flow, it's as simple as dragging it over the connection line, and you'll see that the connection line is highlighted, indicating I am about to connect this node. I'll drop it in, and you'll notice immediately that the output, the result of the footage, now goes into the front, the red, of my color correction. The output of the color correction now goes into the red, the front input of the result node. On the color correction node, you'll notice there's a green input also. Anytime you see a green input, that is the background input. If I would like to access the color correction parameters, I can come down and click on the Effects node button, which will display or hide the node bins below. Now, because the color correction tool is selected, I can access all of the color correction parameters. First thing I would like to do is access my shadows. So I enable the shadow button, and in my color wheel, I'll drag the shadows into a blue. And then I'll go to my highlight tab, activate that, and I'll drag this into a yellow. Then I'll go back to the master level where I can use my histogram and I can resample the colors inside the shadows, the highlights, and the midtones all at one time. If I want to fine tune the shadows even further, I'll go to the shadows once again. Now the histogram is only going to affect my shadows, and I can really crunch in the dark values of my shadows. I can increase the saturation to really saturate the shadows. So now I've created a very stylized look that I want to use. What I'd like to do is have this color correction only affect these buildings in the foreground and not affect the sky or the buildings in the distance. So I want to add a garbage mask into my schematic to isolate just those areas. Remember what I mentioned earlier, the blue input to any node is for your matte or your alpha information. So once again, I will click on the Effects node to access all of my tools, and I'll hit the G key to access only the tools that start with G. I'll take a garbage mask node and drag and drop it into the scene. Immediately you'll notice there's a red dot in the upper right corner of my node. It's indicating there is an issue or a problem. The problem is there are no inputs going into the garbage mask, and the garbage mask has to have a front input to have any value. So now I need to connect my original media into the red input, the front for the garbage mask. I can click on the yellow result of my footage and drag it down to the front input, and you'll see that it's highlighted. And when I release, we make the connection. If you want to cut a connection or disconnect something, just simply click and drag down across, and you'll see the minus sign will appear, and when I release the cursor, I break that connection. You can also connect nodes by clicking on the respective output and inputs of two different nodes. For example, if I just click on the yellow result of this node, come down to my garbage mask and click on the input for the front, you'll see the connection is made automatically. You can do that in a reverse fashion also. Once again, I'll drag and cut my connection. This time I'll click and highlight the input for the front of the garbage mask, come up to the result and click, and you'll see the same connection is made. Also notice that there is an arrow indicating the flow of what is taking place throughout my schematic. Let me disconnect that one more time by clicking and dragging across the connection. Another great hotkey to learn is using the Option or the Alt key when you want to make your connections. This is known as the auto link inside of Smoke. If I hold the Alt key and I take my garbage mask and I drag and kiss or touch the two connections, you'll notice the connection is now made. This is a great hotkey, but sometimes as your schematic gets more complicated and there are many nodes, and certain nodes will have many possible inputs, this connection method may connect things incorrectly. Let me cut and disconnect that one more time to show you an advanced auto link option. Now I'll take my garbage node, and once again I'll hold the Alt key, but then I'll press the Shift key. Now you'll notice that an extended connection is brought out of the node, which makes it much easier for me to kiss and connect the nodes. One more time, I will cut that. Let me show you that a node such as the color correction tool or the garbage mask tool, where it has multiple inputs, you can cycle through those inputs using the advanced auto link. Once again, if I select the garbage mask tool, I hold the Alt key and the Shift key. First, the front will be displayed. If I hit the Shift key again, you'll see the matte input will be displayed. So by holding the Alt/Option key and pressing the Shift key, you can toggle between the different inputs of any node. So once again, I will connect my garbage mask. Now obviously I would like to take this garbage mask and feed it into the input of the matte for my color correction. That way, the mask I create will control what pixels will be affected in the color correction. So I'll select my color correction tool, I'll hold the Alt key, and I'll press the Shift multiple times until I get the extender for my matte. And then I will kiss the connection points together for the color correction matte input and the result of my garbage mask. Now my connection for the garbage mask is made. Another tip for you to access the parameters for any tool without having to come down and click the effects node to discard my bin is simply double click on a node. So I double click on this garbage mask and you'll notice the garbage mask parameters become available to me. Since the schematic view is enabled currently, you'll notice that all the tools and parameters for my garbage mask are grayed out at this time. The tool option is available though, and if I expand that, I could choose Draw Shape or use the shortcut of Shift-C to access this tool. Another option is, with the garbage mask selected, I click over in the result view, you'll notice there's a button reads Add, which is the same as accessing the Draw Shape tool. Either way, I can now come into the view and start clicking and dragging to create the mask to isolate the pixels that I want to have affected by my color correction. Once I've closed my mask off, you'll see that we're now seeing the end result of the garbage mask. I'd like to switch this to be an outside, so down in the parameters, I click the outside button, and to bring some softness, I will adjust the offset to a -12. Now if I select my color correction tool once again, you can see the color correction that I created is now affecting only the foreground buildings and not the background buildings. One more hotkey I want to mention about your node. If you want to remove a node from the connection, you can do so. Let me access my node bins once again. I'll take a glow and I'll drag and drop it. Again, notice the flow becomes connected and I drop it. Now the glow is affecting my footage prior to going into color correction. But then I've changed my mind. I do not want this glow to be part of the flow. I could select the glow and hit the delete key. I can also right click on any node where you receive many different options, such as reset, duplicate, cut, copy, and delete. Or the hotkey combination, holding down the Option/Alt key and the Control key at one time and clicking on a node, you disconnect it from the flow. So once again, let me connect that to do that again. I'll hold the Control and Option key and click and drag and I disconnect. Then if I want to discard this node, I can right click and delete it, or I can drag it to the bottom of the UI where I receive the garbage can, and then I can release the cursor and the node is thrown away. Now I'd like to take the result of my color correction tool and composite it into a 3D environment where I can add graphics, lights, and cameras. So to do that, I want to access the Action tool down in my schematic. So I'll hit the A key, and again you'll see all the tools that start with A are now highlighted. I'll drag the Action node out into the schematic, but I will not connect it yet. You'll notice the Action node only has one input. By default, only has a background input. Let's discard our node bins once again so we can see the action parameters. On the Media tab, you'll notice in the Media list, again, as I said, all I have is a background input. I want to add another input to this. So if I come over here where it reads New Media, I can click and hold that. You'll see the option for New Input. When I choose that, in the schematic, you'll now see a new input is available to me here. And again, looking at the node, we see there's a red input for our front and a blue input for the matte. The same shortcut hotkeys and connection methods work with the nodes for your layers in Action. With the node selected, I hold the Alt key and press the Shift key. I can toggle between the matte and the front input. With the front input extended, I will drag and kiss the connection point from my color correction. And then I will click on the red input for the front of my result node, then click on the result connection point for the action node, which makes the connection. So now we have our original source, a garbage mask, a color correction going into a layer for action, and then the action goes into the result node going back into our timeline. So now I want to bring in another image, which is a graphic. So I'll locate the graphics folder inside my media library, and I'll drag and drop this file. I drag and drop this Photoshop file, and you'll notice that it has two outputs. It has the result output, plus it has a blue output. That is because there is an embedded alpha in this file. If I select my action node once again, I can come down and choose New Input once again. Another layer input named Media 2 is now been added. I can now use one of the many different methods to connect my nodes. I'll take this node, the layer node, hold the Option key, and press the Shift key. I then take the front and I kiss the front, hit the Shift key one more time, take the matte and connect the matte to the matte input coming from my Photoshop file. So these are just some of the main methods for connecting and controlling your nodes inside Connect Effects.